All of Navarre heard her moans, but no one dared speak the word aloud. Orgasm became the death knell for an entire dynasty. This is what the chronicles would later write about Jeanne II of Navarre, a queen whose body became the scene of endless fits and a disgrace to the crown. Her skin would break out in blotches, her hands would clench convulsively before the eyes of her courtiers, and her servants' voices would be drowned out by sounds that could not be explained by prayer or illness. How did society accept this underbelly of power? And most importantly, why do they still try to forget what happened behind closed palace doors? This is not fiction, dear viewers. It is the trembling truth. If you are not a weakling and have made it at least halfway through the story, I salute you. You are a man of iron. In this story, I will show how a rare physical disorder shaped the politics and daily life of one of the wildest royal dynasties of the Middle Ages. It all began suddenly. At first, it was just slight twitches and nervous sighs during meetings. Already at 16, Jeanne could suddenly jump up from her desk, lean against the wall, and quietly groan so loudly that the blood ran cold in the ladies nearby. Over time, the attacks became more intense. Her body arched, her eyelids rolled back in her head, her body tense. The guests would pretend to notice something interesting on the ceiling or to be urgently preoccupied with their dishes. But when the queen came to her senses, she would laugh and say, "Let everyone see what kind of queen they have." Sometimes an attack could be triggered by the mere touch of fabric, a silk dress, or even the sound of music. Once, while lutes were playing in the hall, Jeanne groaned so loudly that the musicians stopped playing, and one of the pages dropped his goblet of wine. She later admitted that music acted on her like a spell. Thus passed the first years of a strange illness that no one could explain. Jeanne wasn't ashamed of her symptoms. On the contrary, she made them a part of court life. Foreign guests and doctors came to see her, eager to observe the phenomenon. Some spoke of possession, others of an unprecedented form of female hysteria, but the queen herself only smiled. Let them think what they want. I like being the queen everyone talks about. In the palace of Jeanne, boundaries between power and the body had long since disappeared. The more the illness asserted itself, the more sophisticated palace life became. She didn't hide. On the contrary, she gathered her advisors in her bedroom, where the walls still smelled of sweat and vinegar, and crimson stains remained on the fresh sheets. The courtiers discussed taxes, watching as their queen clutched the edge of her bedspread and suddenly threw her head back as if catching another wave. Some lost their train of thought, mumbling answers, and Jeanne, catching her breath, would laugh. What confused the men more, my question or my voice? The first to break down under this etiquette were the young servants and young girls assigned to accompany her. After the first week in the palace, 2 fled to a convent, claiming to have seen the devil in the queen. But this very curse became almost a new court sport. The men in the palace would bet on who could endure the longest during the council when Jeanne began to shudder. Sometimes she would deliberately delay the pauses between attacks, toying with the audience, testing who would look away first. One day, she hosted a dinner party right in her bedroom. Instead of a long table, there was a bed piled with pillows, surrounded by ministers, ladies-in-waiting, and an elderly doctor. The feast lasted for several hours while Jeanne, no longer hiding, clutched her body, moaned, and laughed as if everyone around her were not people but mere witnesses to her power. When there was a pause, she turned to the old count and asked him to tell her how his family had dealt with female hysteria. He didn't know what to say, and so he remained in the capital for another month, afraid to return home after such humiliation. Sometimes the queen would mock the women, ordering everyone to wear heavy corsets so no one could breathe deeply. Once, receptions at the castle were held standing only, because sitting in the tight corsets was impossible. Thus, Jeanne forced everyone to feel at least a small part of what she herself experienced. Some ladies-in-waiting complained of pain in their ribs, but no one dared leave. Serving under such a queen quickly made women famous or broken. Doctors stopped offering treatment, and new methods were invented solely for her amusement. For example, one day a whole council was assembled. Some insisted on bloodletting, others on locking the queen in a steam room for 3 days. She listened to these arguments, lying on her bed, constantly twitching from yet another attack. Sometimes she herself called the doctors to observe. She ordered them to record her pulse and breathing rate until her body began to tremble again. After yet another experiment, the young doctor fled Navarre, claiming he had seen hell come to life. New courtly habits also emerged. Ladies of the court considered it an honor to wipe the queen's brow during an attack. They would later boast of this handkerchief as a magical talisman, but no one wanted to remain alone in the queen's chambers.
Bedroom if Jeanne called at night. There were too many stories of her wandering the halls at night, wearing only a nightgown with wet hair and eyes filled with a strange fire. Beyond Navarre, rumors began to morph into jokes and threats. In Spain, a tale was told that after a visit to Jeanne, one ambassador spent a long time recovering from a strange female fever. In Italy, jokes were made that if a wife was too passionate, she should be sent to Navarre to the queen. Even papal legates began to refuse to go to the palace, inventing illnesses and misfortunes. In Navarre itself, things were only getting darker. People on the streets whispered that the royal palace now always smelled of iron and sweat, and that the guards, for an extra fee, were willing to hand over old linen to servants from other houses. Supposedly, it brought good luck. No new custom was surprising anymore. If the queen could hold a feast during an attack, then tomorrow she could announce that prayers would be said in her bedroom. Jeanne II made illness a symbol of her reign. Her bedroom became the place where the kingdom's most important matters were decided amidst the smell, the groans, and the fear. Everything in her court was subordinated to her body, even power, even the laws, even the very meaning of monarchy. Jeanne II had no private life in the traditional sense. Everything that touched her body instantly became part of her public image. Stories had long circulated around the palace that the queen lost control even in the most formal situations. But true savagery emerged where power and intimacy intersected. Unlike many of her contemporaries, Jeanne made no attempt to hide her disappointment in men. Her first lovers fled the palace after 1 or 2 nights. The next morning, they were met with indifferent looks and caustic mockery. Sometimes she would chase them away, right during meals, hurling insults after them. Useless. What do I need you for? Men were wary of approaching her. Even those from noble families were reluctant to offer their sons, as any union with the queen promised humiliation and a strange, painful glory. Jeanne quickly realized she didn't need a partner. She needed an audience. She ordered mirrors installed in her bedroom so she could see her own body during her attacks. Sometimes in the middle of the night, young girls were brought to her. She didn't touch them, simply forced them to watch her shudder, explaining, "This is power, when it's not you, but your body that decides everything." No one dared argue. A chronicler at court once recorded a scene that was later retold throughout Navarre. One night, the queen held a banquet in her chambers. Several men sat on the edge of the bed, unsure where to look, while Joan, half covered by a sheet, laughed and cried at the same time, clutching her neck. Sometimes she would suddenly lunge at a guest, sinking her teeth into his shoulder or cheek, leaving bloody marks. After each such evening, half the guests swore never to return. Public rituals became a habit. Every new ambassador was obliged to kiss the queen's hand on his first visit. Sometimes her fingers were damp with sweat, sometimes with visible signs of cramping. After the ceremony, Jeanne ordered the guests to sit nearby, motionless, until the latest attack subsided. People were often speechless, some fainted, and the queen herself watched the chaos with a smile. The women at court became the primary witnesses to her obsession. If one of her ladies-in-waiting became pregnant, Jeanne demanded that they bring her so they could talk and touch her belly. Rumors circulated after such visits. Some women lost their children. Others began hallucinating. No one could explain what exactly was happening, but fear of the queen permeated even the most closed family circles. A saying went, "If the queen trembles, expect trouble." even during official ceremonies, with the entire court watching her every movement. She would suddenly freeze, grip the edge of the throne or the railing, close her eyes, and a moment later exhale loudly. A wave of nerves would sweep through the hall. Those closest could hear her breathing become harsh, and her fingers would grip the wood so tightly that they would leave marks. Once during a grand council, while discussing the war tax, Jeanne suffered such a violent attack that she nearly fell out of her chair. The councillors tried not to look, but they couldn't look away. The queen's head fell back, her face turned crimson, and a spasm racked her entire body. At that moment, she suddenly burst out laughing and ordered the decree rewritten so that the wine tax would go exclusively to her personal treasury. In all these scenes, any normal order disappeared. Every visit to the queen could turn into something unexpected. One French ambassador later wrote that in the Palace of Navarre, the night is longer than anywhere else, and everything begins after sunset, when bodies become the protagonists. New traditions emerged in the kingdom. Women wore amulets against female fever, and men were wary of touching objects from Jeanne's chambers. The queen herself turned her obsession into a political tool. If she was bored, she would suddenly hold a nighttime meeting, summoning all the chief ministers to her bed while her body writhed. She would issue orders without regard for propriety. Some decisions were made precisely at such moments. No one dared argue when the queen looked straight through everyone, as if she didn't notice them. Jeanne II became a symbol of power subservient to instinct. No one in her kingdom could feel safe. Everything from court etiquette to political intrigue was subordinated to her body, her cravings, her unexplainable and terrifying desire. The older Jeanne II grew, the more theatrical and defiant her rule became. She governed the kingdom as if every decision and every outbreak of illness were a scene in one grand performance, where the audience dared not turn away. Advisors accustomed to strict protocol lost confidence around her. Meetings were now more often held not in the hall, but at the foot of her bed or in a warm bath, where she ordered papers and decrees to be brought. The nobles learned to choose their words so not to irritate the queen, for an attack could strike at any moment. Jeanne would give orders while lying in the water, wrapped in white linen. At that moment, her face would suddenly contort. Her breathing would become harsh, and her hands would grip the edge of the bathtub. Sometimes the water in the bathtub would turn cloudy, and then she would demand that it be changed immediately, as the smell and sight of blood would only inflame her further. The servants would quickly carry away the buckets, pretending everything was fine, even though the entire floor knew she was having another attack. One of the strangest incidents occurred at the council meeting, when the construction of a new mill was being discussed. Jeanne, lying on pillows, suddenly demanded that two young carpenters be brought to her. When the men entered, she
examined their hands with interest, then forced them to strip to the waist and stand by the window. Then, right in the middle of discussing the estimate, she suffered a violent attack. Her body shook so violently that the blanket flew off the bed. The queen began breathing heavily, and when the attack passed, she ordered the carpenters to be paid double for their patience. The other counselors discussed the incident at length, but no one dared to joke openly. Servants were afraid to be left alone with her. They said that if you lingered even a minute, she would force you to read any papers or her favorite psalms aloud while her body convulsed. Sometimes she would grab girls by the arms, preventing them from leaving until the attack passed. Once a young maid, stuttering with fear, spent the entire evening reading reports to the queen while she laughed, pounded her fist on the bed, and demanded, "Don't stop, even if it feels like the ceiling is about to burn off." Orgasm became more than just a physiological phenomenon, but a tool for controlling people and the court. If an attack occurred during an official reception, Jeanne didn't hide. She would turn to a guest, grab their elbow, and ask them to speak louder while she was shaking. Some foreigners would then hastily return home, telling incredible stories about the Naire's court, in which the mad queen screams like a witch while her ministers sit as if nothing is happening. Sometimes, during particularly severe convulsions,
Jeanne would laugh at herself. There was an occasion when, during an audience, her crown fell off her head. One of the ministers, forgetting himself, tried to catch it but missed and fell to the floor with it. The queen, seeing this, laughed so infectiously that her advisors couldn't contain themselves. The entire hall erupted in laughter. After this incident, a new saying emerged at court: "Catch the crown and you'll be a minister for a week." Over the years, Jeanne's restraint became increasingly less pronounced. She would suddenly order any prisoner or merchant brought to her and interrogate them while her body shook in full view. Often, her orders were illogical. She would issue a decree simply because the smell of wine or leather suddenly triggered a new attack. Winemakers were afraid to bring him fore. Sometimes they were forced to hold the vessels right at her head so that the queen could smell the full flavor. Over time, the people stopped being surprised by Jeanne's antics. Only the bravest drank wine at court, and children composed songs about the queen who laughs and shakes while the pages of paper fly. Palace life devolved into chaos, where any morning could begin with hysteria or laughter, and power depended more on her body than on laws and traditions. By the age of 50, Jeanne's body had become her harshest prison. The attacks not only persisted, but now they turned into genuine torture. During severe convulsions, her muscles would cramp so hard that her ribs would break and her skin would become blotchy and bruised. She rarely left her bedroom, demanding that the windows be kept wide open even in winter, lest she suffocate in her own sweat. The sheets were changed hourly, the floors washed with vinegar, but the ingrained smell of iron and burning seemed impossible to remove. She concentrated all power around herself. Now all papers, decrees, and reports were delivered directly to her bed or bath. Jeanne received guests lying naked, covered only by a sheet. She would cry out sharply in pain, throw her head back, and then, having caught her breath, demand that they continue reading as if nothing had happened. Her advisors memorized the rules. Ignore her groans. Don't ask unnecessary questions. Speak calmly even when the queen clutched her pillow with both hands and gasped for air. Once, during a tax report, she became so ill that she knocked a pitcher of water off the table, sending it crashing to the floor and splashing the minister's feet. Everyone froze, unsure whether to laugh or apologize, and the queen, catching her breath, said, "That's how our tax works. It drenches everyone from head to toe." After this incident, the servants joked that if Jeanne dropped something during her fit, it was a good sign for the budget. Death was visibly approaching. Her muscles would cramp every hour, and even the guards on the walls could hear her groans at night. She ordered that she be kept in hot water, because only then could the pain become bearable. After such baths, the water was carefully drained. It would become cloudy and smell of blood, sometimes even taking on a rusty tint. Doctors made notes. Her breathing would become irregular, but her heart would beat wildly. Her pulse would quicken to the point of fainting. Then another attack, another convulsion. In her final days, Jeanne barely spoke. She ordered people to wrap her in sheets so they wouldn't see her own body, and she demanded they read any papers, whether reports or prayers. Sometimes, in the midst of an attack, she would laugh, remembering an old joke. "Look, even death doesn't rush after me. It's afraid of getting burned." One day, as doctors and servants crowded around the bed, the attack struck right during prayer. Jeanne screamed, her whole body tensed, and then fell silent. Her heart didn't stop immediately. For several minutes, her chest continued to heave, as if her body was struggling with an invisible enemy. The servants rushed from the room in terror, certain the queen would rise at any moment. When all finally quieted, no one dared to approach first. After Jeanne's death, a week of cleaning and airing in the palace began. The walls and floors were scrubbed with vinegar, fabrics were thrown away, buckets of herbs and lavender were placed in the windows, but the smell of sweat, iron, and blood did not disappear. Her death was widely discussed throughout Navarre. Some claimed to have heard strange groans and whispers in the empty chambers at night, while others insisted that the queen passed away, never having submitted